All right, guys, we are on day 10. So find your Unit 5 packet and turn to day 10. We're going to talk about a couple special factor patterns. I'm going to skip a bunch of this stuff that we've already done as review, and I want to work on those in class with us. You already know how to do these problems and these problems. Notice how they have 1, 2, 3 things, and then we would do the x. And remember that this 12 right here gets multiplied by the 1 that's in front here, and you get 12. This number right here goes at the bottom, -8. And you got to think of your two numbers that multiply to 12 that add up to -8. And I believe that would be -6 and -2. That's what the first 6 examples are. But what I want to do, so that's how you start this problem, just to refresh your memory. What I want to do is work on the difference of two squares. So we have not yet talked about problems that only have 2 terms in them. So we have done problems that have 3 terms, and we have done problems that have 4 terms. But when you see 2 terms, that's a little bit different. What you'll notice is that this is actually called the difference of 2 squares. So do you know what the word difference means? It means when you subtract, or a minus. So notice how these all have minus signs in them. Do you know what squares are? Squares are like x squared. There's another number that's a square that's a 9 because it's 3 times 3. Can you think of other numbers that are squares? Sometimes you'll see a y squared. What else? 16 is 4 times 4. 25 is 5 times 5. There's like a bunch of them, right? Those are what I'm talking about when we're talking about squares. So when you see 2 different squared things that are being subtracted, that's what you're going to do this method. I want you to first figure out, you have to kind of unsquare them, or square root, if you will. We're going to square root both of these numbers. When you square root 49, you get 7. And when you square root x squared, you just get x. So you're like unsquaring the numbers, right? And then what about this one? When you unsquare 4, you get 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to have 2 different parentheses. And one of the parentheses is going to have a minus in it, and the other one's going to have a plus in it. Okay? Every single time you see a difference of 2 squares, you're going to have 2 different parentheses. One of them has a minus and one of them has a plus. And the best part about this is after you have unsquared the numbers, this goes here, this goes here. And the same exact thing in the second parenthesis, the 7x. And the 2 goes here. Okay? So you're kind of unsquaring the numbers and then figuring out how to put them into your parentheses. So you're always going to have one of the quantities is going to be subtracted and one of those is going to be added. You have a minus and a plus, okay? This is our final answer. You'll be able to do them really, really fast, which is awesome. Let's try a couple more. First of all, I need to square root or unsquare this stuff, and that gives me 9 and x. So you unsquare the 81, and you also unsquare the x squared. I'm going to square root the 64. That gives you 8. And I'm going to write my 2 parentheses. One of them has a minus, one of them has a plus. By the way, you can put the plus first and the minus second. Doesn't matter. Okay, so my 2 numbers that go into the formula, the 9x goes first here and here. And the 8 goes last here and here. Do a couple more. How about this one? I'm going to unsquare this stuff. And there's no number there, it's just a 1. So I still just get 1x. When you unsquare x squared, you get x. And same thing here, square root, unsquared, you get 5. Really, really fast. One of your parentheses has a minus, one of them has a plus. So I'm going to write the x in the first part of both parentheses, and I'm going to write the 5 in the second part of both parentheses. X minus 5, x plus 5. There's our answer. Let me try to do one more. Actually, I'll do 2 more. How about this one? Again, we have a difference of 2 things that are being squared. You might not recognize 1 as something squared, but it's 1. 1 times 1 is 1. So you can actually unsquare or square root 1. How about this guy? 121, when you square root it, you get 11. You can check that in your calculator. And when you unsquare the x squared, you get x. So, 1 minus, 1 plus. I'm going to put 11x in the first part of both parentheses, and I'm going to put the 1 in the second part. Awesome. Love it. This one. Something very important. This is not a difference. Can't do it. Did you know that you can't do it if it's a plus sign? Remember that this says difference of 2 squares. This formula only works if it is a minus sign. If it's a plus, can't do it. Make a note to yourself about that. We'll probably put that on our note cards. But that you need to be like watching out for. Let me do one more since they're so quick. I'm going to unsquare this, and I'm going to unsquare this, and I'm going to double check. Here we have a minus again, so we're good. We can do this one. When I unsquare 4, I get 2. When I unsquare a squared, I get a. What about when I unsquare or square root 9? You get 3. And when you square root b squared, you get b. So yes, sometimes, to make it a little bit harder, we'll have a variable in both positions, I guess, both spots. So I have 1 minus and 1 plus. I'm going to put the 2 a's first, and I'm going to put the 3 b's second. Awesome. Love to see it. Okay. How about these? I'm going to show you just maybe 1 or 2 of these, and then we'll be finished, and I'll leave the rest for you to work on in class. Now I see 3 things. 1, 2, 3. So I'm not doing what we did up here. These are different. Okay. I'm back to having 3 things. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to do the little X thing. This number gets multiplied by the number here, which is just 1, so I get a 4 on top. This number is a -4. That's what goes on the bottom. What are those 2 numbers? 2 and 2 makes 4. But if they're going to add up to -4, I think they both need to be negative. A negative times a negative is a positive. And -2 plus -2 does make -4. Okay, so I got it. Remember what to do next. You split this -4x into these 2 numbers. -2x and -2x. Keep the positive 4 at the end. And keep the x squared at the front. So we just split, it's called split the middle, right? We took this number, we crossed it out, we changed it to -2x and -2x. Now here's something we've been doing for like a week now. 1, 2, 3, 4. When you have 4 things, remember that means you put parentheses and then parentheses. And you're looking for a GCF. These both have an x in them, and the smaller of the 2 is x. So this was 2 x's. You took out one of them. That means there's 1 left. Keep the minus sign. This was 2x. You took out the x. That means there's a 2 left. And here, between 2 and 4, you can take out a 2. And because it's starting with a negative sign, I'm going to take out the -2. It was -2x. You took out the -2, which means there's an x left. And remember, this is supposed to match, so that's good. The positive sign is going to get changed because I divided by a negative. So I'm going to put a negative there. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. Be careful with that negative sign. Because we took out a negative here, that's going to change this sign, which becomes negative. And then, as you know, remember these are supposed to match, and they do, and that's the first part of your answer. And what's the second part? The x minus 2, which is hanging out on the outside. So that looks a little confusing because both of the answers are x minus 2, and you can write it like that, or if you want to save yourself some time, you can write x minus 2 squared, because there's 2 of them. Let me just do one more, and then we'll be done, you guys. Love you guys. Thank you for listening. 64, 16. What times what is 64? I believe 8 and 8. There's a lot of other combos, but 8 and 8 add up to 16. And everything's positive, so we're staying positive. I'm going to change this into 8x and 8x. And I'm going to keep the 64 at the end, and I'm going to keep the x squared and the plus sign at the beginning. So remember what happened? I just did that a little bit fast. These 2 numbers, I crossed out this, and I made it here. Okay? Now when you see 4 things, you're going to do grouping. Both of these have an x in common, so I'm going to take out the x. I'm left with x plus 8. How did I get that? It was x squared. I got rid of 1x, so there's 1 left. Keep the plus sign. It was 8x. I got rid of the x. The 8 is still there. What number can you divide 8 and 64 by? You can divide by 2. You can divide by 4. There's actually a bigger number. It happens to be 8. And again, this was 8x. I took out the 8. That means the x is left. Keep the plus sign. 64 divided by 8 is 8. Good news. These 2 match. That's the first part of my answer. What is the second part of the answer? X plus 8. And remember, yes, they're the same. That's okay. That can happen sometimes. You can also write it as x plus 8 squared if you want to. Either of those is fine. You don't have to write both, but either of them is fine. I dare you to try these. Love you guys. I'll be around answering questions, okay?